As a child, I recall hearing ghost stories from my grandmother, eerie tales filled with strange shadows and unexplained noises. I remember the way her voice would take on the texture of a hushed whisper, each word imbued with a depth of terror that only a skilled storyteller could conjure. She would tell me of these phantasmal figures that lurked in the darkest corners of our world, hidden behind the veil of the unseen, waiting for the right moment to emerge from their spectral abode. She spoke of the strange noises that would fill the stillness of the night, the soft creaking of wooden floors, the eerie echo of a distant disembodied laughter. Her stories would paint pictures of shadows danced around the room in the dim flicker of candlelight, figures that could transform any innocent object into an entity of unbridled fear. Every night, I would lay awake, captivated by these tales of the supernatural. Back then, they weren't just stories meant to frighten me, they a gateway into a world of the unknown, a world that I was too curious yet too scared to explore. Even as I grew older, these stories stayed with me. They became a part of me, shaping my view of the world and sowing the seeds for a fascination with the paranormal. Little did I know, I would live one such story in the future. I'm an ordinary man living an ordinary life with my wife in a small town in the Midwest. Just like any other, our life was full of simple pleasures and small victories. Our weekdays were filled with work, chores, and the warm aroma of home-cooked meals. Our weekends, on the other hand, were brimming with laughter, shared moments of joy, and the sweet serenity of a small town that had an unhurried pace of life. We resided in an unassuming two-story house, nestled among the rows of similar-looking, humble abodes. Our home was simple yet charming, complete with a little porch, a tiny garden, and a picket fence that yearned for a fresh coat of paint. There was nothing glamorous or extravagant about it, but it was our sanctuary, our refuge that echoed with stories of our love and dreams. Through the years, we nurtured our home with care and affection, filling it with memories that made it truly ours. Every piece of furniture, every family photograph on the wall, every knick-knack and heirloom was a testament to our journey together. Our home was an embodiment of our shared history, a testament to our resilience, and a euphoric celebration of our ordinary life. However, as ordinary as our life was, and as ordinary as our home seemed, all of this was about to change, and change dramatically. It happened on a winter night, when the town was tucked underneath a comforting blanket of snow. Until that winter night, our home, and indeed our lives, were nothing out of the ordinary. My wife started complaining about feeling a certain presence in our lovely home. Initially, I dismissed the claim, attributing it to her overly active and vivid imagination. I brushed it off, not paying much heed to her escalating anxiety. Her words would flow past me like the whispering wind, never truly sinking in. My mind was preoccupied with the more tangible aspects of life: work, bills, our kids. Her fears of the supernatural seemed trivial in comparison. However, as days turned into weeks, her account started taking a more detailed shape. She began narrating instances when she would see a figure lurking in the shadows. An apparition, a woman she described, who seemed to be ever present in our home. The mysterious figure showed up unexpectedly, always lurking in the corners, often visible in the periphery of her vision. This spectral woman, she claimed, never posed directly in her line of sight. Her eyes, now home a constant flicker of fear, were always darting around, as if searching for the elusive phantom. My wife's demeanor changed. She became anxious and disturbed, her peace stolen away by this unseen presence. I found it hard to ignore her growing distress, her unease seeping into our daily life. But then, things started to change. My wife's fear became my fear, her anxiety my anxiety. I found myself nervously in the corners of our house, half anticipating to see a ghostly figure myself. Her stories, once discarded as mere products of fantasy, became rooted in my reality, always in the periphery, never directly. I, a man of logic, decided to investigate. Throughout my life, I've always been inclined towards logical explanations, the ones built on concrete evidence and empirical data. I held firm in my conviction that what I had witnessed was nothing more than illusion, perhaps a simple trick of light and shadows. I couldn't entertain the idea of something supernatural at play, for it did not align with my rational reasoning, and so I embarked on my quest for the truth, my mind holding high the flag of rational thinking. I was certain that the mystery, as complex as it may seem, would finally surrender to the power of logic and reason. Meticulously, I started investigation, trying to uncover every minuscule detail of the house, seeking any possible explanation that could put my restless mind at ease. My investigation, however, kept leading me in circles. The house radiated a of normalcy that was simply undeniable. It stood there, with its age-old architecture, as if mocking my futile attempts at digging deeper. Every nook and corner seemed to whisper the same story. There was nothing unusual here. The rooms echoed with the normality of a typical household, and the walls held no hidden secrets, no signs of disturbance, no eerie history that could justify my sightings. As I delved deeper, my certainty grew stronger. The house was just as it had always been, normal, with no hidden secrets or eerie history. The figure, however, didn't cease to exist. It was an eerie omnipresence that seemed to be pervading every nook and cranny of our once serene home. It was a palpable entity, despite its unseen nature, that seemed to hover over us like a dark cloud, threatening to shroud us in its invisible grasp. With each passing night, my wife's distress grew exponentially. Her once peaceful nights were now replaced with restless tossing and turning. Her eyes, once brimming with life, were now dulled with exhaustion and apprehension. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the wind, sent her heart pounding against her chest in fear. Her sleep, once her escape, was now haunted by this relentless presence. I, who had been a constant pillar of strength for her, felt utterly useless. My hands were tied, my mind was grappling for a solution, for a way to protect her, to shield her from this unseen terror. But how could I fight against something that I couldn't even comprehend? The incessant fear reflected in my wife's eyes began to eat at my conviction. My logical reasoning was gradually being clouded by a creeping sense of dread. The pressure was mounting, the tension in the air was palpable. I was a skeptic, a man who only believed in the power of logic and evidence. But the events, the experiences, the constant state of uncertainty was beginning to take a toll on my skepticism. I found myself questioning the foundation of my beliefs, the very essence of my rationality. My skepticism was slowly turning into worry. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The relentless passing of time was all we had as a mute witness. My wife's health, once robust and full of vitality, began to deteriorate. She was no longer the vibrant woman I had fallen in love with. Eyes, once full of life, now bore a haunted look. They reflected an unfathomable depth of terror that I couldn't comprehend. The house, once filled with laughter and had become a labyrinth of fear for her. She started avoiding certain rooms, certain corners. The living room, where we used to spend hours reading and talking, had become a no-go zone. Her once favored sunny breakfast nook became a dreaded space. It seemed as if an invisible was dictating her movements within the confines of our own home. Her behavior turned from strange to alarming. She would often wake up in the middle of the night, screaming and sweating profusely. It was as if she was living in constant fear, a fear that was slowly seeping into the marrow of her existence, turning her life into a perpetual nightmare. It was a fear that was electric and palpable, beating in the air around us with a dreadful consistency. And the worst part, I couldn't see this woman, this ghostly figure that was tormenting my wife. The tormentor remained unseen, hiding in the shadows, a phantom feasting on my wife's sanity. This ghostly figure, this invisible nemesis, was tearing my world apart without a hint of remorse. I decided to bring in a professional, a paranormal investigator. He went through the house, room by room, corner by corner. He said he could feel a presence, a strong one, but couldn't communicate with it. His conclusion? We were living with a ghost. A chill ran down my spine as he said those words. I, a man of logic and reason, was now living a ghost story. Now I'm here, sharing my story, my reality. We're still living in the same house, with the same ghostly presence. My wife still sees her, And I still can't. So what happens next? How do we live with a ghost? How do we communicate with it? How do we make it leave? I guess you'll have to wait to find out. Because this, my friends, is just the beginning.